also in Texas. There, more than 180 local businesses and 50 corporations have come out strongly against this particular bill in two separate letters blasting the bills. Joining me now are two of the business leaders who signed on to one of those letters. Former Dallas mayor and U.S. Trade Representative under President Obama, Ron Kirk. He is currently senior of counsel at Gibson, Dunn and Crutchers. I'm also joined by Brett Hurt. Brett is CEO and co-founder of Data.World. A big thanks to both of you gentlemen. Ron, let me start with you, sir. Realistically, I mean, what do you hope to accomplish with this push? What did you hope to accomplish with the letters? Republicans seem pretty dead set on passing these laws in a state that is, as you know, largely Republican.
Well, Craig, thanks for having us on. And what we'd like to do is try to highlight the fact that, one, these bills are totally unnecessary. Texas already has some of the most restrictive voting registration procedures of any in the country. Two, these bills are not good for business. We had an economic study done, and you'll hear Brett talk about the fact businesses increasingly oppose legislation that affects the fundamental rights of their employees. And while Texas has been a great state for corporate relocations over the last 10 to 15 years, the continuation of the assault on individual liberties, whether it's the rights of the LGBT community or the rights, particularly of our people of color, of our senior citizens to have unfettered access to the ballot box, that's going to make us a less desirable place to do business. So, I mean, I know what the odds are. I'm a former, in addition to being a former mayor, I'm a former secretary of state. I can count. But when our business community has spoken up like they have today, as they did in 2019 on the trans bathroom bill, we've been able to change some minds. Hopefully we can do so today.
As we continue to look at these pictures inside the State House there in Texas, this protest, Brett, you've described this wave of legislation, this anti-voting legislation, as, quote, fundamentally attacking democracy. Walk us through why you believe that and how you decided to get involved in this fight.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, and thanks, Ron. I'm a proud Texan. I was born and raised here in Austin, Texas, and I've been a business leader now for 25 years. I've been an entrepreneur. And these voting laws that are being proposed right now are fundamentally attacking democracy because they're completely unnecessary. Texas already ranks 45 in terms of voter turnout, including in this presidential election. We should be talking about increasing the right to vote and making sure that all of our citizens' voices are heard. I'm a proud independent voter, and I'm very concerned that this is going to hurt the economics of Texas. This is not the branding that we want. Any state that brands themselves as being for suppressing the vote after we just weathered and we're still weathering this awful pandemic, and we came together to bend the curve and therefore increase the right to vote, we should not be talking about restricting the vote right now, and or any time for that matter. All eligible citizens should have the right to vote, and that will be what shapes policy and parties to basically answer to all of us as citizens, which is the reason we elect these people in the first place. So we need to improve in Texas, being ranked number 45, not devolve at this time. And that's horrible for business. I mean, one of the provisions in here restricts people's ability to do voting at 24-hour places. Well, that's horrible for workers. People that are working multiple shifts, that's a horrible thing. And that's not something that we should be, at all encouraging as Americans or as Texans or as people here in Austin.
So Brett, what do you think the motivation is here for folks who are pushing this bill? What do you think's behind it?
Well, I mean, I think it's a partisan motivation, unfortunately, and it's not based on any type of rationality that I can see at all. It's based on this desire to reverse history and try to limit access. And we've seen in the United States that any time you limit access, like show me a period in United States history where we increased access to voting, whether it was the right for our Black citizens to vote, the right for our women to vote, where that turned out to be a bad thing. In every single situation, it has increased the prosperity of our nation. It has made the voice of the people heard. Our nation is the most valuable in the world. We have the largest GDP in the world, and this type of voting suppression laws directly attacks the Texas economy. And that's not what any of us should put up with. It's fundamentally anti-democratic. And again, I say that as an independent voter, someone who's voted for as many Republicans as I have Democrats. And this legislation really, really bothers me to my core because of the way it attacks our citizenry, especially our citizenry that is working multiple shifts, our citizenry that are people of color. This is not on the right side of history. And this is something that if it passes, Texas will regret. This is not the branding we want.
Ron, let's talk about next steps here. I mean, you know, when Georgia passed their new voting law, Major League Baseball pulled its all-star game out of Atlanta. Beyond the letter writing, beyond the protesting, are you calling on business leaders to take steps beyond those things? I mean, will there be financial consequences if these laws pass?
Craig, I think there could be. We aren't at that point yet, but I wanted to just follow on that last discussion. And let's be honest about this. We're seeing this not just in Texas, but throughout the South, principally because the Republican Party has been hijacked by the lie promoted by former President Trump that somehow he lost that election because of malfeasance and misfeasance. We know that isn't true. His own attorney general rejected it. All 50 states certified the election. And this is just a raw exercise in power by an increasingly, by a Republican Party, increasingly more concerned about keeping favor with Donald Trump than the rights of their citizens. And I do think for states that do this, as Brent pointed out, where people put conventions, and we've seen our professional athletes, particularly the last election, the strength of the voices of the NBA players, the WNBA, even in hockey, has given them more authority to say, we aren't going to reward those states that refuse to protect our basic rights and freedoms. So it remains to be seen. But as Brent says, I don't think this is going to be a good thing for our state's economy. And frankly, it should be embarrassing. I mean, Black people have only had the right to vote really since 1965. And I mean, 1966 in the passage of the Voting Rights Act. And yet Republicans want to take us back to those same tactics that were used to keep my parents from voting now. And I want to do everything I can to fight.
And even after the passage of the Voting Rights Act, a lot of folks that look like me and you, Ron, had a hard time voting in a large swath of this country. Ron Kirk, Brett Hurt, a big thanks to both of you on this Thursday morning.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.